Hey, you. Welcome to the What Reading Book Podcast, the no boring zone where we get you all excited about books that are worth reading.
On the What Reading Podcast, you get some unbiased take on books, juicy scoops of what runs through the minds of your favorite author. You can call us your virtual book connoisseurs that help you filter through the many books out there and let you know the ones worth reading.
On this podcast, we talk about different book genre. We do not discriminate, from fiction to non-fiction, poetry, biographies, memoirs, you name it, so long as it is written by an author of African descent and project our very own authentic African stories. You can count us in. So welcome on board and thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Hello everyone. Good evening, good day, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to another episode of the Worth Reading Podcast. And like we often want to say, it's always a pleasure bringing the next big literature from Africa into your ears. And we are very sure that you're going to enjoy this episode. I have with me Toby and a special guest who has come here with whom we'll be discussing this book. And we're very sure that you'll have a good time learning about the characters in this book. And as they jump from the pages into our mouths, or out of our mouths rather, and into your ears, we expect that you would go ahead and pick up a copy of this book. Hi, Toby. How are you doing?
Hi, Sherry. I'm very well, thank you. It's lovely to be here again. And excited about this particular episode. I'm always excited about every book that we're discussing for obvious reasons, right? But this one is quite an interesting one. I don't know if it makes sense for us to tell like the backstory of how we got this one on our table. So the author of this book is one of our ardent listener, right? Which is actually a beautiful thing to start with. And it's just so exciting that it's switching sides this time. Not just as a listener. He's not coming here as a listener. He's actually our guest. And it just goes to show how much of impact or, good stuff, incredible work that we're doing, if we do say so ourselves, that, someone who has audiently listened to every single episode of the What Reading Podcast is now a guest because this book is, totally worth reading. So, without further ado, I think it just makes sense for us to reveal who this guest is. Is none other than Mr. Olukorede Yishau. I hope I got the pronunciation of your last name right.
You did. Thank you, Shelly. Thank you.
Yeah, it's so lovely to have you here. I hope you're doing all right.
Yeah, it's good to transform from being a listener to a guest. I've listened to every episode except the last one, and I'm sure after this, I'll certainly go to it.
Yeah, and it's been nice to hear your voice or hear your take on your own book afterwards once this is put up.
Published, right? Yeah. Amazing. The book in focus today is Olukorede's second novel. I hope I got that right. It's titled After the End. I actually found out about him after he had published his debut, which is titled In the Name of Our Father. I didn't get a chance to delve into that or dig in to know what that particular one is about. And so I knew that, if he's releasing a second book, then it's definitely worth giving a look. And I decided to go through this one titled After the End. And in fairness, it was so hard to put down. It was totally unputdownable. So
it was really after the end.
Perhaps by the time we're done with this episode, maybe you get the gist behind the title anyways. But to provide a bit of more context and help our audience understand who our guest is, I will be reading quickly his bio. And Olukorede S Yishau is a Nigerian creative writer and multiple award-winning journalist. His first novel, In the Name of Our Father, was nominated for the Nigerian Prize for Literature, Africa's largest literary prize in 2021. After the Hand is his fourth book and second novel. Yishau is the United States bureau chief for the Nation newspapers. He lives in Houston, Texas. And yeah, that's our guest. And I was going to say round of applause, but I don't know. There's just a part of me that is just so excited that feels like building up so much more energy in here. But it's so lovely to have you here, Mr. Olukorede. And we just wanted to find out if there's anything more you would want our audience to know about you very quickly.
Well, I think that about summarizes who I am. Except I just want to add a few things. My first novel, for instance, was something I wrote when I was 24.
Wow.
Somehow I just felt it wasn't good enough. I kept passing it around friends and all of that to read. They will read and get back to me and say, "Ah, this is good." But somehow I just wasn't convinced enough. And I kept it until I was going to turn 40.
Wow.
Wow.
And I felt, okay, I've been a journalist. I've won columnist of the year. I've won entertainment reporter of the year. I've won aviation reporter of the year. I've won other ones that have been finalists in several other categories, including journalist of the year. So I thought, okay, I think now is the time to add the title author or creative writer. So I sent the book to Tony Khan, who I had become close to at that time. I said, okay, Tony, I want you to read this for me. If you think it's good enough, okay, I'll go ahead and publish. If you think it's not good, just tell me and I'll gladly throw it in the trash can. That was the message I sent to him. And I think 3 or 4 months later, he got back to me and said, come and pick it up. It's good enough. Go ahead. And he was very excited when he eventually got on the Nigerian Prize for Literature. In fact, he was the one who called me. I was sleeping. It was a Sunday. So when I woke up, I saw that he had called me. Judy, dad had called me. I was like, "What? This guy is calling me." So I think I called Tony back first. So when I called him back, he said, "Have you heard the news? Have you heard the news?" I'm like, "What news?" He said, "Okay, check the Lagos Review website in 5 minutes or 3 minutes or something like that." So he didn't tell me what it was. So, but somehow I was like, it must have to do with In the Name of Our Father. But he just refused to tell me. So I called Jude. So it was Jude who now said, "Congrats." I said, "For what?" He said, "You've not seen the list. Your book is on the list." I said, "Okay." That was what Tony was trying to tell me. So at that time, so I went on the website. Then they had already uploaded it. So I saw it. Of course, when it came out, there were a number of critics who didn't like what I was trying to do. Of course, that was what I wanted to do at that time. But there are a few people who felt you could have done it a different way. In fact, there is someone who is my friend now who did a review of it last year and wonder how a book like that will even get on the Nigerian press or literature list. So he felt I wrote it more as a journalist and not as a creative writer. That it was like journalism, modern creative writing. Well, we're friends now. That is his last post before we spoke. He did a post on Facebook and said that he hears I have a new book. He's hoping that I have improved. So,
Wow.
so when I saw that message, I said, okay.
What a wow.
So I looked for his number and called him. We had a very friendly chat. He told me what his problem was with the book and all of that. I said, well, uh, for me, the judges on the Nigerian Prize for Literature Prize were all professors at that time. So if professors felt it was good, it's some form of validation for me. I know
Yeah,
that there is no work of art that is perfect. You
exactly.
can always make it's better. But again, what criticism like that did for me was to make me be more careful with my second novel. If the feedbacks I've gotten so far is anything to go by, I think the criticism were not in vain. So that's all I want to say for that.
Maybe this will help me. I'm glad that you've kind of like set the tone or the pace for this conversation to start with, because personally, I always approach creative writing done by journalists with such skepticism for obvious reasons, of course, because I definitely understand that, creativity and, factual writing or, non-fictional writing, as it's where when it comes to journalists, are like two words apart, right? And so it's usually like, I don't know if the word to use isn't such a struggle. Like it's a very fine balance to strike when, as a journalist, you're trying to embark on a creative writing project. And all. So for me, I think I went through a few chapters of In the Name of Our Father. I I don't know why, but I never made it through. I don't know. But for this particular word, and by the time I got to the end of the book and I read your notes on the acknowledgement and the people that you ran it through, I was like, okay, now I get why the quality of this one or this one actually reads like what any creative fiction writer would have done. Because I could tell that, the story were well seasoned, like the flow, it was just a healthy balance. It wasn't trying to do so much or, the usual thing that you find whenever people are just trying to mimic something that they are not and all. It just seemed quite seamless, that you had a very fantastic story to tell and you were keen to be as natural about disseminating that plot or delivering that. And yeah, the usual flowery words and, all the other literary elements that should come along with a literary fiction came to fore eventually without forcing it or trying so hard. So thank you for such effortless, writing, if that makes sense. So
Thank you.
yeah, this leads me to my first question. I'm not going to do the old usual, "Oh, what's inspiration behind it?" I beg. Let's just go right into it. I want to talk about this man, Demola. Yes. Yes. Let's start from there.
I,
Because what is it with
Everybody
men?
wants to kill him. Thank God he's dead.
Backstory, yeah,
Exactly.
guys.
Thank God he's dead.
As soon as I started reading, I had went through like a few pages and I already said, nah, man, okay. I just went into Instagram and sent a DM to the author and I was like, wait a minute, this? Like, why are men always like this? If you're Yoruba, if you know what Agbako, yes, unfortunate. Like,
Maybe,
why?
maybe, maybe the men in the books, yeah.
Here we go again.
Not the
I
men in
beg
real
it.
life.
But I'm just like, Demola is such a wonderful soul. And I just really want to understand what really informed this character. And if you can attempt to maybe draw a better portrait of men such as Demola and what you were trying to achieve with them in your hands, that would be really, really fantastic. I don't know if I managed to deliver that question properly. Like, what really inspired?
I think the other side to that question is, are there still men like
Okpa,
Demola?
you did not
Plenty.
listen to what you see on Instablog. Oh, the Joro, all of
Plenty.
them. Ah, God, will we not be unfortunate? Like, God.
Plenty of them.
So really, what was it, like a personal story or something that happened to someone very close to you, or you so much?
I can't recall now, but I have a feeling that, I am one of those writers that want people that anything you say can be used to write a story. So you should be aware that you are not just gisting with an ordinary person when you are talking to me. So I think it must have been something someone uh, said to me. Then I added salt, pepper here and there. But I know that the origin of this story. I think I was either reading for the first time or reading Chimamanda's Americana.
Okay.
Then suddenly from nowhere, this idea of doing a novel built around William Shakespeare's words that the evil that men do live after them just jumped on me. So I think it must have been in that process that I said, okay, what have I heard before? I just wanted to build something around those words. That's why the guy had to be dead at the beginning of the book. Because all the after effects of everything he did has to come to light now that he's gone.
After the end,
So
right?
it's actually those words, the evil that men do and all of that, that actually uh, gave birth to that story. Every other thing was okay. How do we take it forward for that? That's how all those things. Like for instance, there is a scene in this book about a fire incident. That was what happened when I was growing up. It happened in a house just by my home. So I just so in recreating that scene, I had
Yeah.
to remember, okay, how did it happen? And
Mm-hmm.
I remember that the person it happened to who was on the fire, his name is Lekon. We call him Brother Lekon. So someone
Okay.
actually had to wrap himself with a blanket to go in and bring him out. So I had to. So usually when I need to recreate a scene like that, okay, something like this has happened before. How did it happen? So I start recalling such things, and of course I may have to like add a few things here and there to make it suit whatever I'm trying to portray. But at the end of the day, really, the origin of that story is just simply that I wanted to build a story around that Shakespeare words. Then every other thing I must have heard here and there. Then I started putting all of them together, and at the end of the day, we,
After
we
the
have
end
after
seemed
the
like
end.
the kind of book that you would think a woman would write, because it's very rare for you to find male authors write deeply flawed male characters, right, in such a manner. And I hope there's no part of you at the back of your mind that you felt like, well, I hope I'm not betraying the brotherhood.
For me, if I need to tell a story, I just tell a story. I don't care
Well,
whether the
that's the
brotherhood should
journalist in
come
you
from my
probably
head or not.
coming to forward. No, Shay, please say your own. Let's hear what's running through your mind, please, because I'm very,
Then
very
when
interested
I
in
wrote
this
in the name of
conversation.
our father, my mother was afraid that I was attacking people in government. Military, you are writing about Basha. So, so the story just needed to be told. I just told the story. So brotherhood should forgive me.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't hold court for the brotherhood. Um, I'll just say that Demola was one of.
Was a bad boy.
I was going to say one of a kind, but I would say one of several kinds of men, right? One of several kinds of men that feel like they can always um, clean their tracks,
Hmm.
and I think that he had successfully done it so well
Hmm.
to a certain extent
Hmm.
until death came lurking.
Hmm.
But I also want to believe that, in fact, I'm sure the circumstances around his life was even one of the contributors to
Hmm.
his early demise, because that was quite something to pull off. To be very honest.
It was when they started. Me and one of the editors said, like I said, we're not going to make this too obvious. We just leave the readers to come to the conclusion of whether it was all the troubles in his life that precipitated his cardiac arrest or whatever. But we're not going to be
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
be to be too open about that. Just recreate all those last 10 days of his life and just leave the readers to decide whether okay he just died on his own or it was all those troubles of those last 10 days. So it was just something we were just like no, it was going to be solved to anything that makes it too direct. Me and one of the editors decided that no, let's take away anything that makes it too direct. Just paint the picture enough for each reader to make up their mind. My publisher, for instance, told me that, but the guy wasn't that bad person. Now, why did everybody say he's a bad person?
I was going to come to that actually.
That everybody just moved on once he's dead. All of them just move on. That was in fact, he described him as a victim of circumstances.
What is it with men are not taking responsibility? Don't start with you people.
I was going to build a question or scenario around what you just said about him being a victim of circumstances.
That is not true, guys. No.
Hold on.
He's still going to take his, look at his background. Look at his father.
Hold on.
Like,
he's still going to take. He's still going to take. He's still going to take a good chunk of the blame, right? But
good chunk. The whole
I'm not sure I recall exactly the time period between when he had gotten to the UK and when Lydia eventually made it down. Right.
It was just about 2 years.
Yeah. But the truth is that he really could have done better, right? There were a lot of circumstances. I tweeted a couple of days ago and I talked about how we oftentimes talk about how we cannot control ourselves while doing certain things. But I differ. I would say that there's nothing we cannot control about ourselves. The fact that you cannot put your hands into fire in the actual sense of it means that you still have that consciousness to say, oh no, this is wrong. But with a lot of people, first it feels like an adventure, right? It feels like you are so slick that you never get caught. And then when the reality then stares down at you, you have to then make difficult choices. I wouldn't pass a judgment as to how we could have handled the reality when it got to that T junction, right, where there was a baby from at one end and there was somebody else 1,000 miles away waiting to come join him. But they really could have done better.
Toby is shaking her head already.
Toby, are you happy now?
It's the subtle way you're even saying it that is even infuriating me the more, because at the back of my mind, I'm just like, you know what they say Yoruba? I'm not even going to find a way to interpret this to English. Like there's what is bad is bad, and what is bad, there's a way our society tends to make a lot of excuses for men, and that's the part that makes it even difficult for us to.
I think it's a men's world, actually.
It's so difficult for us to come to terms.
For trouble.
No, like we're always quick to like say, no, it's because of this.
I'm just saying what it is, what I've come to learn, right?
No, it's audacity for me. It's the
even on social media in the past few days, there's a lot that has happened around men and marriage and second wives and side chicks and
polygamy.
I think that
shading itself to be
I think
polyamorous, man.
I think one thing I always tell people is it still happens across every part of the world, right? But I think for the Africans, we spend a significant portion of our productive time proving how audacious we are with the wrong things, right? So the young guy in school, for instance, there are young guys that are acing it in school, but there's another section or there's another group of young guys that what they want to prove is how they backed the girl, how they got that babe and this babe, or how many of them they've gotten, and things like that. And the world is moving too fast, and you then realize that even across the larger society, so older men enjoy the sport of spotting younger women, right? So older married men enjoy the fun that being moneyed can bring to them. All of these things are they're just signs of decadence, but it's just a reality that
You don't let them come for
that I've come
you.
to live with. And sometimes I ask myself, what really can we do about this? How can this be changed? Because in current day, we'll talk about an actress that got married recently, and people would say that if it were a woman that were in that same situation of being divorced multiple times, a lot of people will frown at it differently.
Of course, it's the
But
double
we
standard always for me.
we
Like,
get away with
and everybody just kept on saying that.
murder, actually.
Like, it's how a lot of people were coming forward and saying that, oh, can people show proof? The mere fact that it's already going round as some form of rumor is already a stigma on the woman if the tables were turned around. And it's how a lot of people were just like, let them show evidence that, oh, these are the 3 photos of him getting married to 3 people and everything. Go and speak to an average single mother on the streets. And ask them what they go through. Ask them how this world just actually puts this label on them permanently as if there are some damaged goods, and nobody will come forward to be saying all this kind of thing. The solution, Shay, to answer your question, because you talked about, okay, so how can we change this and all of that? I think it has to do with a mindset thing and orientating the average woman or the average girl to believe that men are not the price and that marriage is not the ultimate and all of that. And it's easier said than done, because whether you like it or not, we women are very emotional and sentimental beings, right? But
I think there's a lot of work that is going on with that. There's a lot more awareness, if we're being honest.
We still have a very long way to go. How else will you describe powerful, successful women that are really, really killing it in other areas of their life, and when it comes to this, so what's the man, they still end up
not being married,
making very stupid. Like, you just look at them and you're like, Shasa Sydney. Pardon me, like, how did you manage to end up with a man like this? Why were you not thinking straight or wearing that mindset that you wear in the boardroom when you are making other important decisions and everything? But again, emotions.
For that, it occurs on both sides of the table, both for the man and for the woman. So there are sometimes you meet some men and you're like, oh wow, how did you end up here? But back to what we're trying to happen is the fact that we can clear the leaves for all we care. If we don't look into the root of it, we're doing nothing. We're just clearing the leaves for the next season, right? If we're being truthful, we'll realize that there's actually there's an historical perspective to all of this across religions, right? And we would say that religion is an enabler of many things.
Is Demola
so
Muslim
both Christianity,
He was Christian.
both Christianity, Islam, and even traditional African or whatever continent religion it is, you realize that men have always gotten away with things. So I'll give you an example. In the Bible, for instance, when the Bible talks about the adulterous woman, we never know who she was committing adultery with.
It was the woman that the society was dragging and throwing stones hard.
Maybe she was doing it with herself.
Which was not possible. So it was the woman that the woman became the woman. In fact, when you hear of the word adultery, because of that picture in the Bible, a lot of people think of it from the woman's perspective more than from the man's perspective. So you hear things like, for the man, that's when it starts becoming, he was having an affair, right? It becomes, they are lighter words. But
euphemisms.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, but in all, I would say that looking at Demola's picture, right, there are no excuses. It could have done better. It was unfortunate that he tried to explore and got his fingers burnt. He just didn't know how to cure the burnt fingers, and then it became a monster that he couldn't properly.
Toby is not even giving him any credit. For like 2 or 3 months, I can't remember correctly, he avoids letting her into his room. They're always meeting outside until he couldn't again, and he was just being.
I wish we were going. This was not just going to be audio. Like, people could see my face right now.
As my body no be firewood.
Hey, my God. God. Amen.
The guy couldn't help it again.
Yes,
He had to help. He had to help himself.
they meet outside and all of that. But later I said it's not polite to keep
His
keeping
defenses
your
were not
friend
strong
outside.
enough.
So he allows her in.
I
And,
love
and
how you
something
managed
happened.
to provide a background about Demola and his upbringing. And I think that should have put a lot of things into context for an average reader to help them understand that, your work as the writer was to paint a canvas and leave it for the audience to decide, the readers to kind of like decipher what they're going to take out of it, what interpretation or meaning on which side they're going to be on and all that. And for me, the part that really, I mean, part of the excuses that most people make from badly behaved men in our society is usually to say, oh, the family institute. Shay, why are you giggling? Of course, like let's call it what it is and say, oh, it's childhood trauma, it's PTSD, it's upbringing and everything. And we all can come up with 1001 excuses. And I've read women to have their own fair share of very awful upbringing too, right? But there's a saying in Yoruba that when they give birth to you, you also have to reborn, go through the process of rebirthing yourself, or sort of like
About
reinventing
be
yourself.
be.
Exactly. And for so a man like Demola and actually getting a front row seat to see what the mother experienced in the hands of his father, that should have put a lot of pressure on him to make sure that he did not repeat negative history. Sorry, I hope I'm not giving away spoilers or anything, but it's just so weird that men just feel some men just feel that they can do bad all by themselves and get away with it, and it's actually the audacity for me. And you're like, these women could have been your sisters, for crying out loud. Like, an average man who is actually driven by his balls, that lacks self-control or discipline, is very, very dangerous, and it's like disaster going somewhere to happen as far as I'm concerned. And so Demola was not a man. He's deeply flawed, like every other human and everything, but there were just one too many faults about him. And I really hope that, uh the generations to come actually produce less men that are that flawed, men that do better, men that are not so selfish or self-absorbed enough to not realize that there are consequences to action, and that at the receiving end of all this nonsense that I was doing were women, were children, people that they didn't even have, like, look at those three boys. Look at what eventually happened to Tuminino. I mean, like, who would have thought that one man's I don't even know what to use. Like, the whole thing just annoying me. Like, one man's misfortune and bad decision to not control his balls would lead to that little boy going through all of that. Like, the ripple effect. And people really need to start learning to understand that for every actions, there are consequences. And so, even when the emotions are, getting the better of you in that moment, just take a step back and think of what the
Yeah,
repercussions
I
are.
would say that I think something that would lead to a question for me is first I would say that we're all products of nature and nurture, right? And just like you rightly
Absolutely.
said, yeah, just like you rightly said, at some point, nurture is external, right? So because you are growing, so everything that you learn to do is based on the external factors or forces that mold you. And then at some other point, nurture starts to become internal, where it's more mental. There's a lot of character development. There's a lot of mental work that you start to do where you're either expunging things that you feel are not right, and taking on things that you feel are right. In this book, one character that also stands out for me is Justus.
Hey,
uh,
my
and I
man.
like how I like how you painted that picture of a man
It wasn't perfect. He
that
isn't
in fact
perfect too,
came into
anyways.
that actually came into
Yeah.
himself, right? So we had that picture of, yeah. It never really started. It started out as a great guy. It never stopped being a great guy, right? Yeah. In fairness to him, it was a random. It became a randy guy, right? But
Which
I
fairness
think
to
that
him.
I liked I like the picture that he created, especially how that bonding that he then started to have with Tumininu, and the journey that sometimes when I say that the journey that they'll have ever after, I remind myself that ever after now starts to exist in my own mind because you've dropped the
We,
pen
we, we,
already.
we, we- I refuse to put that one there. I leave you people to conclude the story in your mind.
So what made you create that character as some sort of counterbalance? Because we're coming from a Demola that had wreaked all the havoc, and then we're ending with a justice that is trying to help them strike a balance and doing it without any form of
And it's
force.
also
For
important to mention that you managed to make sure that you didn't paint Justus as a perfect guy. Like he
of
also
course,
had his,
there's no perfect guy
yeah.
anywhere.
So it's the
There's no
reality,
perfect
yeah.
human,
This, yeah,
actually.
we're all
Anyway,
flawed at
yeah.
the end of the day, yeah.
You know, the choice of Idera's name was deliberate. Idera Olua.
There are lower.
So
I saw that in the book, actually.
yeah, she's gone through so much. She needs relief. Like someone did a review and like, okay, if there is any fault about this book, maybe it is because it ended on a good note. I say, Abba, that she's been through so much. She needs some relief, I beg. The creation of Justus is supposed to be part of what will bring her relief. Funny enough, Justus is supposed to be like a carryover from the name of our father. There is a character in the name of our father called Justus Omoeko, also a journalist. So he also went into prison and all of that. So what I originally set out to do was to continue the story of his life after prison in the name of our father. But somehow, during rewrite and all of that, some of the details of this new justice didn't fit into the other one. So, but I just still wanted to maintain the name, so I just simply changed the surname. But originally, it was conceived that way until some of the timeline, all of that, just told me that say you were unable to pull this through, so just make him a different person. So it was just a tool really to bring relief to Idera because Olukorede S Yishau made her go through so much, and that's why I don't like writers. They just give people too much problem.
Yes, and still around the men surrounding Indira. I'm sure one of the men that would likely
Dr. Balogun.
miss out talk exactly would likely miss out talking about Dr. Balogo.
Just
And
who's guy.
yeah, and for each of the characters that you created in this book, I would say that each of them have clear pictures in our daily realities, right? So for a Dr. Balogun, there are several Dr. Balogons that exist in different workplaces, right? Where they are getting the kick somewhere, and then they want to also latch on um to the new babe or whatever it is.
Like men that take advantage of vulnerable women, right? Women that are in a very bad shape, right?
Yeah, especially in the workplace.
Mm. Watch your back, ladies.
How would you say that situation is prevalent? Not just in Nigeria, but even across the world, because the picture you created did not occur in Nigeria,
Mhm.
right? It occurred in what we would like to put in quotes call Sena climes.
It's everywhere, even here in the US. Almost every week, I hear stories here. A lot of Nigerians here in Texas work with what they call Department of Criminal Justice or something like that. It's like the prison service. A lot of Nigerians work
Okay.
there. And because they work very long hours. You
Okay.
hear all kinds of stories about someone helping the other, as in dating the other, and they're all married. But somehow they're spending so much time with these other people who are not their spouses. And before you know it, they start helping helping one another. So it's a human thing. It's not specific to Africa or Europe or the Americas. It's just a human. And one thing most of us don't realize is that we actually spend more time at work
Mm-hmm.
than at home. Most of the times we spend at home, we're actually spending them sleeping.
Well, I think this was before the incidents of remote and hybrid work. Sha.
Well, but you still find that I'm not sure 50% of workforce work from home.
No, 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 no,
So
no,
so
not
for
up to
so
that
for
level.
those who still do regular nine to
Still,
five, go to the
yeah.
office, you still spend
Mm-hmm.
more time with your colleagues than with your spouses and children.
And in some cases, you even spend more time after work with them because
Mhm,
there's a team bonding
mhm,
somewhere.
mhm.
There's a colleagues social event at
and
another
and
place, and
all kinds of things happen during those
yeah,
those those
there's
those,
games night somewhere.
all kinds of things. Maybe the husband has been behaving to how one could, then you complain to the colleague, then you rest your shoulder, then from shoulder hand starts going to where they're not supposed to go.
Now from clap, that's the start, Abby.
So all kinds of things happen, my brother.
Anyways, I would say that one other thing I liked about the dimensions that you introduced to the story was the knife violence that occurred.
Mhm, mhm.
And I like the fact that you sort of brought it to the fore because in the UK it's something that is quite
Prevalent here.
prevalent. I remember many years ago when the story of Damilola Taylor
In fact,
broke,
in fact, Minino
and
was supposed to be like Edamidola Taylor.
yeah.
In fact, I actually killed him in an original in the earlier script. It was one of the editors I work with, Taira Chagaya, who said, "Abba, don't be this wicked."
Thank God you didn't kill him actually,
Yeah.
because unlike you not killing him in real life, a lot of young boys
Don't
have
make it out
actually
alive.
died from knife violence. Even earlier this year, there was I know there was a story of a young boy that was on his way to school and was victim of sword violence by some man. Some and I would say that in situations like that, looking at how Tuminu became a victim, how just out of being a well-behaved boy, out of being a kind person, right? Just trying to show him the way, unlike many of the other school children that couldn't be bothered. Would you say that incidents like that is are things that take away empathy from people, so such that by the time he grows up into a man and he remembers how his kindness nearly cost him his life, why then should he have a reason to be kind?
Of
Spoiler.
course, he will certainly be more careful going forward. If a random person just comes up to him, the way he will treat the person will certainly be different from the way we'll have done before the scary experience that almost took his life. So we all get careful based on our past experiences. So certainly, he will, of course, it doesn't mean that he will stop being kind to people, but
Mm-hmm.
it will take better stock of how to go about it in order to also not get himself into trouble. Everybody, it's just a normal human uh, way of keeping trouble at bay. He certainly will be more careful.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that people that have been victims of one form of violence, hatred, whatever negative external effects, um, don't use that as reasons to lose their sense of humanity.
Mhm.
But finally, still on people not losing their sense of humanity, I'll touch on Lydia. Uh, right, I like the balance that you brought to our story, because by all means, Lydia ought to have been the. She started out. She came up and appeared as someone that was brazen, right? Because she was the, in quotes, offended party. She was the one that had every right to stake a claim, having, like you said, or like you wrote, so they had some legal bond, or and but how she then began to handle the whole situation afterwards, like much later, where she came back to the hospital, to talk to the and just try to talk
To
her
what
path,
end, please?
even though
Sorry, Shay, I had
there
to
was
cut
not
in.
having
I'm so sorry I
any
have
of
to cut
that.
in. I'll allow
Yeah.
you finish your question, right? But
Okay.
personally, I actually think that the character of Lydia wasn't fully or well developed, because I would have helped a great deal to get a bit of more context on, okay, so what actually informed that at disposition, which is, in all fairness, isn't ordinary. And the fact that
What
she,
would you call, what at disposition in what sense?
like how she handled the whole thing, like, so the part of her disposition of how she wanted to be, make herself known to Idera, right? Like, I'm the other woman.
Uh,
Like, so yeah, so to what end? Why do you want us to become friends and everything? And in my mind, I'm like,
no,
again,
but I didn't think she wanted. I think that if you ask me, I opine rather that I like her approach.
no,
First of all,
I'm not a fan of
she
it.
needed to become known, right? She needed to become known. They had
Not
that
in that
reality had to
moment.
come
And I
to
also
play.
felt
That
like it was out of guilt that she came forward. It's interesting that Olukorede is just quiet and is watching the both of us debate this out. Like, it's the guilt. She wanted that was name, but at the expense
no,
of a
no.
grieving
So this is what
woman.
happens
No.
exactly. But they were both grieving women,
The grief
right?
on
They're
one
both
hand
grieving
was
women.
worse than the other. Like, I
No,
don't
you
know.
cannot measure grief on any. You cannot measure grief on any hand, right? So the point is that there are two things at play. First off, she was also grieving. Secondly, when a man dies, like happens, I remember the movie Chief Daddy. When a man dies, that's when that. In fact, you cannot wait too long to resurrect your presence, because just in case, God help you, there's some will somewhere that needed to, or some stuff that needed to, she needed to make it known that, hey, yeah, we are grieving, but
I
I'm
am here.
also here in one corner. So in case you are trying to make decisions, your guy also did something in this corner. So I don't think the timing was wrong. I think that if it had taken too long, it may have not been to our own
He waited
advantage.
the
And
whole 3 months.
exactly.
How
So
is 3 months a home?
again,
Like, what is that? Like, I mean, if for so many years if all this while she had managed to keep herself in the dark, why couldn't she have stayed there even much longer? No, and I just really want to
no,
quickly
no,
make
but
this point,
remember that
Shay,
before
around female
Demola died,
friendships. Like,
she was going to come out.
Of course,
Remember,
it was Demola who kept begging her.
she was going to come out. So it
hey,
was almost a case of, should she or should she not press on with this
men are
idea
the
of revealing
issues.
herself? And I think it was good to reveal herself. But yeah, you're going to say something about female
Yes, I was
friendships.
going to say something about the dynamics of female relationships, right? I was going to say there are
Yeah.
two things that you tried to do with this book, which was to celebrate female friendship, as well as much as female friendships can be very, very beautiful. On the other hand, you have the fact that sometimes women can be their own enemies, right? Because, I mean, I thought about the fact that, for someone like Idira, she had the support of Suliat through all of those trying times.
Sulia
And,
kan.
and I just thought
Ayeto.
that, yeah, that was that was just so beautiful to see and all of that. But on the other hand, I always wonder what actually goes on through the minds of women that are side chicks, right? Or women that end up, not to say that I know there are, there are different, dynamics, or but women that end up getting married to divorces, or men that probably there's quite a number of controversies surrounding their previous marriages before, they dabble into another one. There's a saying in Yoruba that passion to know ya so again, I'm always like, why are women always so unduly optimistic, especially when it comes to men, or would rather take the side of a male rather than actually come forward and seek solace, or succor in the possibility that there's such validity in the story of another female, or there's such validity in the experience of a fellow
Yeah.
woman than whatever story a man is peddling to you, and all of that. And so having those two differences, or how do I put it, that like to me was quite an interesting one. On one hand, you had a celebration of female friendship. On the other hand, too, you had like two women that were like up against each other, and they were, sleeping with the same man. And then I was just like, hey, well, they show, yeah. Like, why is this one so hard?
Celiat is one character I'm extremely happy I created.
I love her vibe. I love her energy. Like, she's just,
It's mad babe.
yeah, so happy go lucky.
Mad, mad,
One man
mad,
cannot come
mad,
and kill
mad,
me or finish me.
mad babe.
Like,
I just felt that this Cinderella is going to go through a whole lot of troubles from Olukorede S Yishau's hand, and I'm like, she needs some balm, some person who keep her cool from time to time. I just feel like, okay, let me give her a very good friend who will be there to buy her pop off, who will be there to force her to eat, who will be there with her children when she's not there, who will just be ready to to do anything for a while. There's a line there where we're like playing on Bob Griffey about who is your bro? Says to the who is
and he bro,
your who, in fact, originally it was actually written in Yoruba, Tani
yeah, and he
Sulie,
bro.
but eventually I changed it to English language. Originally it's Tani Sulie. Where's
Yeah, yeah. I was going to say that there were three things in that picture, in what Toby said. The beauty of female friendships. The That's one. Two is the question around the acceptance of women of rubbish. That's two. And then three is the place of men, and all of the fact that men always have their way. So I think those were. But beyond all of that, one thing I never miss when this occurs in a book is how I was going to say that it was good seeing OAU again in the book. Yeah, so I wasn't
Yeah,
going to miss
shout out
talking
to Great
about that.
Ife.
And when you wrote about the board at the humanities, I know that the Toby used to, that must have hit home for Toby,
Yes,
because
yes, it did.
that area was
That used
where
to
it
be my
felt like
life.
our own territory.
Every Sunday. Yeah, every Sunday where
you and Anna Ojo?
Anna Ojo.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
Anna Ojo
yeah.
was quite popular on
Yeah, Anna
campus because she
Ojo
was a
Uh,
correspondent
for the
yeah,
Nation
she's
for
in
the
newspaper for
She's in
Nation.
Campus Life.
California now for a fellowship.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
she's still his good friend.
Yeah, we're still
Yeah,
best friends,
she's
actually.
she's in California
Yeah,
now for a fellowship.
Yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah.
great to hear. And even while, and it's interesting how, you know, that scenario you created, or that story you told around justice, and how he evolved from that campus journalist to that firebrand unionist to then the uh, you know on unrelenting columnist and then ex prisoner,
Investigative journalist at some
and
point
it
as
tells a
well.
story
Yeah.
of how, yeah, it tells a story of how sometimes the person that we end up becoming, we build it from the unlikeliest of times, right? So there are a lot of people that who they are now is not necessarily what they studied in school or what their primary courses were. It was all of the activities, all of the side activities that they learned to develop themselves in while on campus. I, for one, for instance, yeah, I also was doing my thing at my faculty with journalism, with debating, with writing, and whatever it was. And I wouldn't say that I've deviated so much from all of that. Every time people ask me what I studied in school, and I remind them that I studied agricultural economics, it always comes as a root shock to many of them. But
You know, the idea about how Justus and Idera met is someone's true life story. Someone you know, someone who has been on this program. Uh,
ah, I know
uh,
the person.
uh, Mrs. Adela Fayede. She and her
Yes, now.
husband actually met at Sekai Oluwasomi Library.
Library. I think she mentioned it. That's
So that
interesting. I mean,
that was what came to my head
Uh,
when I was writing that place. She once told me that story in an interview, and it's also part of one of our books. I think it's Above Whispers. Funny enough, the column I write in the Nation every Friday is called Above Whispers.
yeah.
So actually,
mm,
I took when we were having an interview with her. So she was talking to me about someone, and that someone described that person as she doesn't speak above whispers. And that she was like, what kind of a person is that? Your voice should be heard. Why will you not speak above whispers? So I picked that as
I
okay.
picked
I
that
was
up.
going to start a column at that time. Then eventually, she too also started a website abovewhispers.com. So I just said I like above whispers. I said, but well, in my own column, I was going to be speaking above whispers, not like the person she was speaking to us about who doesn't speak above whisper. So for us as writers, it just when you tell me this, look, one day as I'm doing my creative writing, it comes to my head. I said, okay, I will use this. So when I was going to write, I remember, okay, the two of them you met at Hezekiah. Okay, these two people too also meet in this library. and I think in their own case it was about a book and all of that. I think she also told me about them going to the cinema and all of that. So, okay, I will use some of this small thing then just add some pepper to it.
I mean, I love how OAU, Obafemi Awolowo University in Ife is becoming such a beautiful setting for most of the contemporary African literature that we have out there now. There's another book that a lot of people are quite excited about by the debut novel by Damilare Kuku, author of Nearly All the Men in Lagos Are Mad.
Mhm.
By the way, the first episode we ever did ever of What Reading Podcast was actually
The
a
Worth Reading
review of
podcast.
Mhm.
Nearly All
Nearly
the
all the
Men in
men in
Lagos
Lagos
Are
are mad.
Mad. So that author has just recently written another book, which is going to be out like in July, right? And I got like a proof copy, and I've just been voraciously reading it. And that book also takes me back to OAU. And I'm just so glad to see that, you know, a community like OAU is such a beautiful place to, to have, studied. And I always imagine seeing this in movies and books and, in comics and all of that, and seeing all of that come to life now just feels like a full circle moment. And I'm glad that I literally just finished reading after the end, and I'm reading what's the title of this Damilare Kuku's new book now? Um Only Big Bomb Bomb matters tomorrow. Yeah, that's the
tomorrow.
title. Yeah, that's the title. And everything about the book is set in Ileife, is set in Obafemi Awolowo University and all. So I just wanted to mention that. Yeah, thank you for paying
No, no.
homage to our
OAU
alma
is
mater.
beautiful, so we can't run
Yeah.
away from that fact.
Yeah, thank you very much. And so I was going to ask, right, that so what would you consider? I know this book was released this year.
Yeah, May.
Um, yeah. Are you onto another project already, or you are doing your best to push this book out there?
At the launch of this book, I think on Tuesday, they were asking me about the next book. I said, okay, maybe another 4 or 5 years.
That's a long way. Don't make us wait that long, please.
uh, well, I suspect that I may have another book out in 2 years, but it may not be it may not be fiction.
Oh, okay.
There is this book I'm working on about my travel experiences. It's actually a book that I've done a short form of it. It's on Amazon, but I'm doing like a total rewrite of it. It's going to come with a new title and all of that. But the one on Amazon is just a small thing, but it's undergoing some serious surgery. So I suspect that that may be my next. Because the one on Amazon is more like I'll call it like a pamphlet. so so it's being transformed into a full length book. Maybe that may come in 2 years. Then maybe after that, I have the novel in my head. I have the title. I have the synopsis. It's something set in Texas. For now, I call it Echoes of Home. It's a novel about the fact that we live far away from home, but we are unable to run away from home. So, so where it is going to start, I don't have a clear idea, but I have the synopsis and I have a working title. So I don't know. Maybe in December I'll start writing.
Yeah, we can't wait, and I'm sure a lot of Nigerians in the diaspora can't wait. Because as much as we can, everyone looks forward to news from home.
Every day. Well, if you see five Nigerians there now, in 5 minutes they have started talking about Nigeria. If you then
Yeah,
even every aspect of our lives, marriage, or everything, our culture, and everything, despite the fact that we're far away from home.
there's no place like home.
Yeah, someone was talking to me, I think like 2 weeks ago, and he was saying that, you know, back in Nigeria, my wife never gave me food without kneeling down.
People are
So,
to
What's that
justify.
now?
say, boy, since they got to America,
What is
What
this?
was
because
that
everybody is
now?
busy, she's gone to work maybe for 10 hours. She's coming home. If you are hungry, you better go to the kitchen.
Are there men that still have such expectations of women?
The fact that she was even doing it in Nigeria was, come on.
In
So,
2024.
But that's another topic
that
entirely, Sha.
that they were. Yeah, but there's no daddy way again. If daddy way cannot go and microwave his food, man, daddy way
Èmi àpàdájúwà o.
then a guy brought a girl. Yeah, okay, they were supposed to get married and all of that. But of course, it didn't work. So he was telling me, say, when we were in Nigeria, this girl, if I tell her to sit down, she'll sit down.
Ah.
But she
She a
sent me out
puppet.
of the house that I rented for her.
Well, about that, I would say that to me, there's a lot that defines the marital institution in Africa and Nigeria that is largely socioeconomic.
Absolutely.
They are not based on appropriate fundamentals. So what you then find is when socioeconomic realities change, people change. So I belong to the school of thought that society or realities, changing realities doesn't change who you are.
Mm-hmm.
It only reveals who you are.
Mm-hmm. What you are hiding.
Yeah, that person had always been that person
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
before any move.
Mm-hmm.
What just happened was there was then an opportunity to reveal that person. So,
Mm-hmm.
but with marriage, with all of those things, everybody comes in with their own
Mm-hmm.
skeletons in the cupboard,
Mm-hmm.
come with their own monkeys on their backs,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
they just choose when to start to unpack it.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
It's okay. No comments.
So you don't want to kneel and serve your husband, Toby.
I wouldn't recommend that she does
You don't want to kneel
that.
and serve him inyo and egusi.
God
I
forbid bad
wouldn't
thing.
recommend that she do. I wouldn't advise that she should do
She
that.
said, God
No.
forbid.
What are we even doing in the first place? Like, everyone should aspire towards marrying their friend. And if you're in a friendship with someone, I don't imagine that you kneel down to serve your friend. And so if in a marriage that friendship has actually formed the basis of it, I don't think the dynamics should be any different. And so nobody should expect, have such expectations of women and all of that. Will you kneel down? Would the husband kneel down to serve me food? Or it's, I don't know.
Well, I would say that friendship is relative, but nonetheless, this has been a very exciting interview. It's good to
Yeah,
have
and
met
it's
you,
timely
sir.
too because it's happening in the
Olukorede
midst of
S
so
Yishau.
many.
Yeah, it's happening in the midst of so much rogbodion.
Yeah. For those on Nigerian Twitter or Nigerian
And
X, you probably understand what we're
yeah,
talking about.
yeah,
Hopefully, we get
there's
this
so much that's
episode
happening
out.
around.
The
Yeah,
subject of
there's so much
marriage.
that's happening around the audacity of men,
Mm-hmm.
around the sneaky links that men build for themselves outside of their matrimonial homes,
Mm-hmm.
and how
Women
men just want to be men,
Mm-hmm.
and women still continue to be
and
fish.
men just want to be lords, actually.
Toby is going to complain.
Yeah, men just want to be lords over their women, their families, and but like we agreed, or like we came to understand that what is bad is bad. The goal is to always ensure that we come to, you say that he who comes to equity must
Must
come with
come
clean
with clean
hands.
hands.
Yeah.
We should just ensure that we all come with clean hands every single moment of our lives, either in marriage or in the larger life itself.
Maybe of our
So,
dealings, yeah.
thank you everyone that has listened, and we hope you get to grab a copy of After the End. Is it out in all bookshops now?
Yes, in Nigeria.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So look out. Is it on Amazon?
Not yet, for a reason I won't disclose here.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah,
Yeah.
after
So
the
look out
left
for
is
it in
available everywhere
bookstores in Nigeria.
in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Shay, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate After the End?
This is the part of this podcast that I don't like.
Shay is the politician
This is
of the
part
two
that
of us, by the
that I
way.
always struggle
Like,
with. I'm learning to be less of a politician now. So I would rate it I'll rate it 6.5 over 10.
That's pass mark.
Yeah. So the reason I would do that is I think that there were other parts of some of the characters that you didn't give us the benefit of knowing a lot more about them. And I wish that I really knew Sulia's story, for instance.
how relevant would that have been to the entire plot? The book is not about Suliat Shay. I think, no, I'm not on your side on
Yes,
that one. I feel that there are some characters that should have been well developed, but that doesn't, in the sake of, I don't know, I don't want to use the word brevity, but for relevance sake, yeah, you're not of I felt like Would that have added to it in any way? Would they have provided any more useful information to help us draw or come to a climax? But yeah, your thoughts and your
Well,
opinion are
not
valid too.
necessarily
You're
useful
just being an OAU
information, but I
lecturer as
think
far as I'm
it's
concerned,
around.
Shay. Yes.
No, I think it's around how it would have further spiced up the book for me as a reader, right? So that's my own position on it.
Go and write your book.
Thank
Go
you.
and write your version. Hey, for me, it's an 8/10 for me,
She
and I will
is
tell you
fighting for
why.
brotherhood.
Uh,
Yeah, so I'm fighting for
exactly,
brotherhood.
which is part of why, for the reason why
Fighting
this
for
book,
brotherhood. That's why Toby
beyond
is beefing me today.
beyond the book just being such a treat, like treat in the sense that it was easy to read, it was literary without being overtly flowery. It was
Yeah,
also the
yeah,
fact
actually.
that I was getting a male author, a male writer address issues or subject matters or themes that
A male
typically
writer deal with
female
brotherhood.
writers would always, first, what's the word now? They would usually feast on, these topics and this subject matter, and so much so that it's almost become very cliche, and it's almost as if they are sounding like very repetitive. But seeing a male writer sit down to, paint a portrait of different men in their different shades and form, the good, the not too bad, not too good, and the ugly ones too as well, was it is such a breath of fresh air for me. And on that basis, I would give it an 8/10. And we need more
More
diverse
men writing about
perspective
brotherhood.
around issues that affect women. And so shout out to you for championing causes like this. Will we have more people, more men that tilt in the direction or in the favor of women are actually our allies more than enemies, or would not men that would choose to be female allies than, tilt
And
in the
women that have
direction
male
of
allies as
brotherhood
well.
and still bro
And women
code.
that are male allies as well.
You find you people. So yeah, this was such an exciting conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We've
Thank you,
had
guys. Thank you.
such an
Thank
amazing
you.
time talking to you, and we
Thank
highly,
you.
highly recommend everyone to grab a copy of After the End. I hope you thoroughly enjoy reading this novel, and make sure to share your thoughts with us as well
You
when you
know,
get a chance to actually read
I
it.
like this the style of the synopsis at the back.
Mhm.
Uh, and the person who wrote the synopsis is someone who has also been on this program. I don't know
Mm.
if you guys can guess.
In-
Chimeka Garrix.
Yes,
I knew it.
you read the synopsis.
He gets it. He
Interesting.
understands
A lot of people have
storytelling.
been on this show,
Yes,
actually.
so we should carry, people. You guys, we've done so much for the culture, for the literary culture. We should start acknowledging our service, or
Well,
like this passion projects that we've been on, or else we just imagine please, But anyways,
Thank you, guys.
yeah. And
all right.
I
Thank
must
you
also
very much.
mention that it's really noteworthy that, and such an incredible thing that you mentioned, or you paid huge respect to the village of people that made this work happen. I mean, now, when I was reading the acknowledgement, it was so beautiful to see how you were mentioning what's his name, Chigozie Hobioma, BC,
Hmm.
Ajonkpon, and all of the ways they contribute into, making this such a
And
fantastic
you know,
work eventually.
the
People
the
hardly do
final
that.
title was it came from BC Japan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's one author I'm totally looking forward to having a chat with. Hopefully, we'll get to our book in the next season of the What Reading podcast. But overall, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time. And
Thank
we'll
you, thank
catch
you.
our audience on the final episode of season 2 of the What Reading podcast. Thank you.